The path that life can put you on is often tough and full of distractions, yes, and also full of obstacles. And so to maneuver through these obstacles, in a way, we want to be soft inside, but we also want to be able to cultivate a steeliness. And so we're going to talk about this today. So what do I mean by cultivating a steeliness inside of ourselves? Well, sometimes when we hear that, we can think that we want to harden ourselves on the internal world, and that's not really true. That's not what I'm going for here. In essence, when we begin our path, we want to create that softness, don't we? That openness, and sometimes we go way too far that way inside of ourselves, and we become way too open, and then this can create, you know, naivety, and there's great ways to be like that anyway, because, you know, it can cultivate more lessons inside of ourselves that we will move through and experience and understand and become aware of, and therefore in that sense we become more whole, more complete by moving through them. But today we're going to talk about cultivating a steeliness, which is seemingly in opposition, but we can have a soft steeliness, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Just before we do, I want to introduce you to the free offerings that are available to you down below. There's a free breathing practice, a free community for awakening souls, either on Facebook or Discord. There's a free introduction to Hatha Yoga, and there's the 6-month immersion training that I'm bringing people's attention to down below. In this, you'll gain a foundational understanding of what's going on, where you want to go. You'll have the practices or the asanas or the pranayamas to put into practice to be able to take you from step A to step B, and there'll also be some life positive tools that we will give you so that you can understand your process in a new way and be able to relate to it in a new way. So if you're of this mindset and wanting the next step on your journey, then this is the course for you, and you can apply for it down below. The application form is free, the course itself isn't. So steeliness, something like a word that's probably not ever used in the spiritual journey, but it's kind of necessary, huh? You know, we speak sometimes on the spiritual world about non-violence, and this is great. We want to cultivate a non-violent attitude, yes, absolutely, towards everybody. We want to be completely inclusive of everybody, but the ego can grab hold of this, can't it? And it can become a nice guy, huh? And they always say that nice guys finish last, and it's true. And do you know why? Because they don't have that steeliness cultivated inside of themselves yet. And what does that come down to? Well, in essence, it's a lack of self-esteem. So really though, what does self-esteem mean? Because sometimes we look at things like self-esteem and we can think, you know, if I'm earning £100 million a year and you're earning nothing, and I have more self-esteem than you in this comparative way, but then in this way, self-esteem has become mental, hasn't it? If I feel better than you, then I've won. And I think in a way this is a sickness, and this is not the self-esteem that we're looking at, and we're coming away from that understanding, aren't we, here? And that's why we cultivate that softness inside, which is a great first thing to do, that non-violent attitude. But that doesn't mean losing your violence or your edge completely, because there are some times when it's appropriate to be steely, when it's appropriate to be not violent, but to hold your ground. You see, this path, I see so many people becoming doormats in a way, and I know this in me. We let people walk all over us for the fear of perhaps spiritual judgment or something, or perhaps, you know, God, we think God wants me to be this soft, open vessel all of the time, and it's like, no. God, in fact, has put 0 demands on you. This life is yours to live in a way. And so in this sense, sometimes it's appropriate to be a bit nasty. I don't really mean go looking out at all and be nasty. I just mean we have to have enough nastiness about us to use it if it's appropriate. So what might that look like fundamentally inside of ourselves? Well, that will look like sometimes confronting people and saying what's really going on here. Meaning, if we have a perspective or a view inside of ourselves and we don't let that view out, meaning, what does it mean to be honest with ourselves? Well, in the personal sense, it means to be honest with whatever comes up, and it doesn't mean necessarily always saying it, but it means to be honest with myself, to acknowledge it and to understand it, But there are times when these things will keep coming up, especially in relationship with another person, that we will have to express. Why? Because if we don't express it, we're going to get hurt. And so we take the burden of this thing that we are holding inside that we know is going to hurt the other person, but instead we don't want to hurt them, and so we keep it to ourselves and hurt ourselves instead. And this is a manifestation of that lack of self-esteem. But I don't mean mental self-esteem. I mean, well, what is true self-esteem? How do we feel when we feel of high self-esteem? Well, we feel peaceful, we feel equanimous, we feel confident in oneself, we feel happy to help other people, but also happy to tell them no, this isn't going to be appropriate for me right now, thank you though. And since I've become an employer, it's something that I've had to learn to do. There has to be that, in a way, not nastiness, but it's like you have to have that self-esteem, don't we, to be able to disagree with somebody, to hold on to our vision and say, I'm sorry, but you're not really what I want or what I need right now. Perhaps if we're in a relationship or something that's not working out for us, we're cultivating that ability to be able to say no and be okay with it, and not allow the mind to guilt trip into us into changing our minds later. Remember, what is it really that we're doing here if we are not expressing ourselves truly and fully? Well, one, we're hurting ourselves, yes, but two, we're people pleasing. And what does this mean? It means that we're wanting, in a way, it's a subtle form of control, isn't it? We're wanting nice things from people in the form of, please treat me nicely, and because you're treating me nicely, I'm going to continue to treat you nicely. Or we're saying, I'm going to treat you nicely first so that you treat me nicely back. This is people pleasing, isn't it? And in a way, it doesn't win you friends at all. It wins you abusers. And why does it do this? Well, because we're always there trying to adapt like a chameleon to keep them happy, when we forgot that in fact my focus only really should be in here and keeping my equanimity. And how do we do that? Well, we connect to our beingness, our presence. Why? Because it's always so full of self-esteem, but not mental self-esteem that's comparative to other people and is dependent on the amount of money I earn or the girlfriend that I have. No, self-esteem from the fullness of being, that no self-esteem, if this makes sense. So when we feel full, do we need to please others? Well, we have to ask, why am I doing it? Well, I'm doing it to get something back from them, which is nice behavior, or for them to like me. And when we're full, do we need others to like us? Well, it's nice if people like us, isn't it? But we don't need it. And we can hold on to our own energy as we say, no, what you're doing right now is not what I need or want in this business transaction or this relationship or whatever it is for you. And sometimes, I must tell you, this happened once, my teacher, enlightened master, sometimes you have to have the steeliness to hold your own ground and say, in fact, in this moment, no, you're wrong. I did this to my teacher a couple of months ago. It's like, no, this isn't the way it is here. Let me show you my side of things. It doesn't mean to say, you know, you're wrong and I'm going to reject you and I'm going to hate you forever. It's like, no, it's just what you've said isn't appropriate now for this here. And I'm going to share my piece. It doesn't have to be nasty, but it can be considered, it can be passionate, and it can be true for us in that moment to express it. And that's what we mean by cultivating that steeliness. is being able to be free at expressing exactly what's going on inside of ourselves. To not need to be a nice guy because that's egoic. Sometimes we can just be direct. Because direct was what was spontaneously appropriate and was what was coming out of beingness in that moment. And so that's about cultivating that stealiness, that nastiness. Not that we want to be nasty, no. It just needs to be there, isn't it? For an appropriate moment, if it's ever needed or ever required. I hope this helps. Have a great day. Namaste.